Alright, everybody. So yesterday, not even yesterday, a few days ago at this point, man, my perception of time is a little off. We had the Game Awards, the big, long-awaited event for all gamers in which everyone gets to claim that their favorite game is going to win, and they hope to God that it does, and if it does, they get super pretentious about how a game they like, or is their favorite game, won Game of the Year, and everyone whose game didn't win goes online and continuously complains about how it's rigged, because how could it possibly be fair if their favorite game did not win? Where have I heard that before? Anyway, that aside, I'm not a big fan of the Game Awards. The only thing, I don't even watch it. The only thing I care about are the new game trailers that come out. And man, did this year deliver. We got some pretty exciting games announced. Probably my favorite and most hyped is The Witcher 4. I'd say by a long shot, that's the one I'm the most excited for. But there were a good few other things announced that went hard as fuck, such as the new Helldivers 2 update. Me and my friends have been playing that quite a bit. I've already copped a few levels on Helldivers 2. I think I'm around level 40. Funnily enough, I'm now like level 42 in Helldivers, and I'm level 42 in Classic WoW. Pretty cool. Having a great time fighting the Illuminate. Little tip, they don't like fire. They really hate fire. They despise it. Anyway, not getting too deep into my personal gaming favorites, I want to talk about something that really poked its head out during this big Game Awards event, and that was the amount of misogynistic, chuddy, angry, horndog gamers that were complaining about everything from the new-ish design for Ciri that we saw in the not even in-game trailer. It was a cinematic, a pre-rendered cinematic for The Witcher 4, all the way to Neil Druckmann's new game, or I should say Naughty Dog, but also Neil Druckmann's new game, called Intergalactic: The Heretic Prophet. Oh boy, did that game get a response. Both these games have had a massive outcry from the right-wing gaming community, and man, have their claims been hysterical. I have seen a lot of it's just people outright angry that games are featuring female characters that are not fappable enough for them. Now, there was a long time where I would say these people are tourists. They're a very loud minority, and I want to say that's true. And I feel like in a lot of cases it is, but they are really good these days at making it a reality. I feel like there have been a good few games that they have successfully buried the positive response to under so much hate that you cannot find the positive coverage. For example, the new Dragon Age game, I know for a fact that new Dragon Age game is solid. It's good. I know it has like a few issues. What game doesn't? But overall, it seems to have pleased the majority of Dragon Age fans. But there is so much hate over it being woke, it's like been targeted by those grifters, that you can't really find a lot of positive discussion of it online because it's been drowned out by, rage-mongering clickbait, right? I have the same frustration as a fan of Rings of Power, where there is positive discussion of the show out there, it's just drowned out by all of the rage-mongering clickbait. Most of it featuring really blatantly racist thumbnails, that's how you get the clicks from these people. Anyway, I want to bring it back around to the Game Awards, and I want to bring it around to a video that we're about to indulge ourselves in here. So, one of the few gaming news content creators that I really respect anymore is this guy named Big Fry. He was actually very on top of calling out the day before being a scam, earlier than most others in the gaming sphere were. And he's actually one of those creators out there that's genuinely concerned about helping the consumer when it comes to gaming, like telling them, hey, this is a bad practice, this is a good practice, this looks good, this looks bad, avoid pre-orders, the basic good rules of consuming games intelligently, right? I like this guy. And he doesn't really seem to be a chud. Maybe he's a little bit centrist leaning. It's really, I can't really tell. But he does not come off as, like, super right-wing. But he made a video about the response to the games revealed at the Game Awards. And I feel like the attempt by the right to make GamerGate 2 happen has become so blatant and so loud that even relatively apolitical gaming creators are now having to give their takes, whether in favor or against this movement, about it, because it's just so loud at this point. Anyway, let's go ahead and watch this video. I really like this guy's stuff. He's pretty solid. Hopefully he's not like a gigachud or something, because if he was a gigachud, boy would I be embarrassed, you know, considering I said I liked him. But regardless, hopefully he's not a gigachud. Let's check this out. I watched the opening moments of this video, and it did seem good. He seems like the response to the Game Awards was just too much for him to be unable to respond to.
All right, today I'm doing something that's against my better judgment. I want to talk about a game that I saw at the Game Awards that I, at the time, genuinely thought looked like a cool concept, and that is Intergalactic. It is the new IP from beloved, at one point in time, studio Naughty Dog. Over the last few years, Naughty Dog has, I don't want to say been in hot water. I just feel like more and more people are starting to wake up to the fact that Western studios aren't really giving a lot of gamers the experiences that they've been asking for, and Naughty Dog, based on what happened with the last...
Now, this, off the bat, when I originally watched the opening minutes of this video, was like, what does he mean by that? What does he mean by that? But I don't think he means, like, Eastern developers are the only ones making their game gooner enough for us real men gamers or whatever. I don't think that's what he's saying. It is true that right now, like, even if you're not some, like, crazy chud gamer, the world of Western game development, especially the AAA industry, is not in the best place right now. We get some golden releases, don't get me wrong, but there are, more often than not, a game is either like some indie game from like Russia or Europe or something when it goes viral and ends up dominating the internet, or it's something from like Japan or China or something lately that's been taking off. And I think a lot of it is just the fact that there are a lot of different ideas, you know? Like, a lot of people are, in America in particular, are used to a games industry that's kind of followed a lot of trends, right? Like, there's just a lot of commonalities and trends in the Western games industry. A lot of it's gotten stale. Some people are fed up with bad practices from AAA gaming, and Eastern developers tend to have newer ideas, at least from the perspective of someone who plays games in the West. And so there is a natural and existing and non-like right-wing push of gamers towards Eastern games, and this is a point that a lot of the right have used to argue that gamers do not want Western ugly woman feminist blue hair whatever they say games anymore. They want based Japanese games or based Chinese games. It's like they're taking a real phenomenon and molding it to fit their culture war narrative.
Last of Us 2 is kind of ripe for the picking when it comes.
A really good example of this actually is guess who's a big fan of Neil Druckmann, the creator of The Last of Us and the game that is being showcased here. The creator of Stellar Blade. The game that Grums and all the Gooners talked about being the savior of gaming. Because, you know, you got the, like, upskirt shots or whatever. The creator of that game is a massive Neil Druckmann fan. He's not some, like, chud who's trying to fight against the Western games industry. He's a massive fan of Western games. As you expect, because game developers typically are not weirdos. Well, actually, they are typically weirdos, but in a more fun, harmless way than being hateful Nazis. With some exceptions. Notch.
Comes to this entire subgenre culture war that, I'll be honest, for the most part, I try to stay out of, even though I have my own views on it. But I'm sure some of that stuff is going to leak over into this video. It's really annoying to me that I can't talk about a game concept, vibe, trailer, without having to just address the huge elephant in the room, which is the fact that this game is being downvoted everywhere the trailer is uploaded, including the PlayStation YouTube channel, the Naughty Dog YouTube channel, which at this point in time has disabled.
It's really hard to say like, I want to say that these people are a loud minority, but then I want to, and I think they are, because you have to remember, gaming is by far the biggest industry, period. But you got to remember that in that industry, like, you're including mobile gaming, right? And I hate to be a gatekeeper, but like, outside of certain exceptions, mobile gaming is not really gaming. And what I mean by that, like, I'm not trying to gatekeep, I swear. What I mean by that is if you, like, just boot up Candy Crush, well, yes, statistically, you are considered a gamer. You're not really part of that sphere. You're not really culturally a gamer just because you play, like, Flappy Bird or Plants vs. Zombies on your phone or something like that, right? Or Angry Birds. Like that, you're not getting immersed in gaming culture. You're not playing online and dealing with toxicity and learning the lingo and getting experience in that space. So that's my main point. The gamers that would play a game like this on a console, gamers that would play the games that are mostly focused on in the YouTube culture war space, they're usually PC and sometimes console games. There's a pretty high barrier of entry. You have to be pretty into video games to be interested. And so on that level, if that's what we consider gamer, to at least game on console or PC, when you narrow down gamers to that demographic or those demographics, I really feel like maybe these people aren't a minority. Maybe they just successfully review bombed the shit out of these, or I guess dislike bombed the shit out of these trailers, and the majority of people are obviously not going to watch the trailer or leave a like or anything. But I think that among the gamers that exist online and on consoles, a lot of them, a substantial amount of them, are chuds that get mad when they see a non-fappable woman in a game. I mean, you've been in a lobby in a game, right? Like, we know the stereotypes that have kind of crystallized about gamers over the years, especially in the online left. They're well-earned stereotypes, I think. Yeah, gamers just are not intelligent. They're typically white, nerdy dudes who have a sexually repressed background, and if they're not sexually repressed, then they usually have leaned into some, like, toxic masculinity in order to, like, overcorrect for whatever insecurities they have. And this tends to lead to a demographic of people who are, A, generally too busy playing video games to seek out new knowledge and information, so they're typically very ignorant and willing to stay ignorant. And because they know a lot about games, typically, they feel like they're intelligent and logical people because maybe they're good at solving logic puzzles in games. So they feel authority to speak about real-world issues, and this leads to gamers being very loud, confident, wrong people whenever they talk about issues more often than not. And so, as much as I want to say these people are just a loud minority, I want to say that among the hardcore gamers, they make up at least a significant portion of that sphere. And there is some truth to the idea that if this idea that, like, we need to boycott games that dare to feature marginalized groups as playable characters or even characters with any focus, if we need to boycott these games to stop the DEI wokeness, I think that movement could have some real traction if it is not slowed or stopped with counter rhetoric. I genuinely do. Gamers are stupid enough to fall for this idea that, like, minorities in their games are making them worse, are somehow connected to, like, microtransactions or something like that.
Comments, the IGN trailer, everywhere this game is, it's being ratioed and downvoted to hell. And so before we go down that rabbit hole and talk about my thoughts on all of that stuff, I do want to talk about some of the stuff in this trailer that I actually did enjoy. If you guys don't know what Intergalactic is, it is a new IP from Naughty Dog, which we haven't seen one in over 10 years at this point, and it's essentially a sci-fi third-person action-adventure game. I mean, it's a PlayStation exclusive. Of course, it's a third-person action-adventure game. But the setting is that the world in 1986 discovered a faster way to get to intergalactic space travel. So it's got a lot of like retro wave, synth wave, sci-fi vibes that, in my opinion, is actually right up my alley. The setting for this game, we see the old CRT monitors, the keyboards and the tech are this old-school retro tech, the stuff that I would say like I grew up experiencing because my parents had some of this stuff at the time.
Wait, is that
I obviously was born in the early 90s, so I missed
I think I pronounced his name right. Is that how you pronounce his name?
Retro tech, the stuff.
Yeah, it totally is him. He recently had that insane ass like plastic surgery, didn't he? Or no, he might have just bulked up and that's why he got chatted up. Bro got chatted up, dude. It's crazy.
That I would say like I grew up experiencing because my parents had some of this stuff at the time. I obviously was born in the early 90s, so I missed a lot of this stuff, but like it was still present around my house growing up. It's a very cool setting for a video game. I'm obviously a huge...
He just bulked like crazy for Eternals. That's what I thought. Like I thought he either had to have gotten like insane plastic surgery or very bulked for Eternals. I guess it was that. Dude looks like, yeah, I think it could be him, Bazooka Horse. It would make sense. A lot of these big studios like Naughty Dog are bringing in real actors and they like scan them and then they act as performance actors. It is him? Yeah, so he must be performance acting for this game. That's really cool. Makes sense. A lot of these big studio games are bringing in like Hollywood celebrities to star in them. That's where we're at now with gaming. It is the biggest industry in the world for entertainment. Is the girl an NB? Well, that would be a misgender if so, with your sentence. But no, I don't think so. I think they're like a bounty hunter, and the vibe is just supposed to be like 80s retro punk badass bounty hunter, you know, underworld dweller in space kind of vibe, you know?
Fan of sci-fi. Intergalactic space travel is my jam, and the premise is that you're playing a character who is apparently the pilot of a ship, a bounty hunter who gets stranded within this planet that has basically gone dark for hundreds of years, and you have to, I guess, get your way out. I'm guessing there's going to be a mystery that you have to solve there. The premise of the game is very, very cool. The setting and the vibe is incredibly awesome. They said that they're inspired by Akira, Cowboy Bebop, and old animes, and I think it's hitting a vibe that I resonate with greatly. Now let's get to the bad part. The internet is roasting this game for, I would say, two reasons. One of them I think is completely ridiculous. And the other one, I actually think, even though I may not agree with the entire sentiment, there is some merit when you look at the data and the facts of how games in the West are selling when we get into the murkiness. Let's stop beating around the bush. The first thing, which I think is completely fucking ridiculous, is the amount of people that are pissed off at the game for having ads. It's basically a huge billboard for ads. We saw the Porsche logo. We saw the Adidas logo. And if you guys can believe this,
he makes
people are complaining
really good
that there's
point. He makes a really good point in a moment here about people being upset about real brands being in the game. He makes a really good point about why it's kind of dumb to be upset about that. When it comes to like particularly FPS games, it made me think, no, he's totally right about that. You'll hear the argument in a moment. I've seen like the first 5 minutes of this, by the way.
A Sony logo in a PlayStation exclusive. For me personally, coming from like a shooter FPS background, I do find it ironic. Now, I'm guessing these are obviously two different camps, but like I have a bunch of people in my comment section all the time when a new Call of Duty comes out or when a game comes out that doesn't actually use things like the real gun names or the real gear names, people start to call them out. It's just like, why are we calling this a XM whatever when it's really just an M4A1? Why aren't we using the real names? But then when we look over here, it's like people are pissed off when they...
Yep, pretty much. Like, that is a really good argument. Like, if you're somebody who's like, why are the gun names fake in these games? And you want the gun names to be real? You gotta remember, like, 99% of gun names are literally a brand. Like, they're the company that made them or designed them. And so it's, like, in the name in some way. And so I think it's just realistic. You know, I think it's realistic. I think it's fine. Obviously, I'm not going. Actually, come to think of it, I did fall for the Death Stranding product placement. The first time I ever had a monster was after playing Death Stranding. I chugged like 100 of those and was like, I've never tasted Monster before. I'm going to pick one up at the gas station. And I picked up Monster Energy, and I went home, I booted up Death Stranding, and I drank it while I did a delivery. And I really liked it. And now I still drink Monster Energy. I never really stopped for too long. Yeah, I really felt like Norman Reedus, true.
They are using real life references. It comes back to the old days of playing Grand Theft Auto when you can clearly see that this vehicle is a Lamborghini, but it's called an Infernus. Some people like it, some people hate it. I think if Grand Theft Auto ever got to a point where they were using real brand names of vehicles, I think that's pretty cool too. A lot of people were turned off that the trailer showed a lot of these product placements in it. It felt a little tacky to them. I guess for me personally, I don't really give a shit. I actually think it's cool that based in the 1986, future intergalactic travel, we would have a Porsche spaceship. We would have these it kind of just lends credibility to the world a little bit. And maybe for some people that it kind of hits a little close to home, feels a little bit too on the nose. It maybe feels a little bit shoehorned into the trailer. It's something that didn't bother me at all. I actually kind of thought it was cool for like a fleeting moment. And then it's like, okay, there's way more things to think about. The other thing that people are incredibly upset about is the main character's design. Now, dude, I've seen some of the most like horrific, horrible shit said about the main character design. Bald-headed, butch, lesbian, fucking whatever you want to call it, dude. It has been a trip over the last 24 hours. Dude, when I was watching the trailer, as somebody who's like in game development, I was watching the facial animations, the actual like mocap of the character, the amount of detail in the character itself. I was actually kind of stunned at how good it looked. I wasn't even really focusing on the fact that, yeah, she's definitely masculine. She's definitely got a bald head. I didn't even think about why they wanted to make the character look.
It's because this guy's a real gamer and doesn't have like the poisoning of culture war shit. What an amazing thing. I hate like if you're on the right or left and you watch a trailer like this cannot be good for the people that are on this anti-woke side, by the way. That they have to be on like a hawk's lookout, trying to find anything they could consider woke. They have to constantly be woke spotting. And then if you're like progressive, you just get jump scared with like, fuck. I just know the chuds are going to get mad about this. I'm going to be hearing about this for months now. Fantastic. I'm so happy for people so like disconnected from the culture war as this guy that you can just watch a trailer for a game and be like, that looks like a cool game. I hope it ends up being good. I hope it is fun, and I hope it does what it's trying to do well. Not, that character design seems like it might be part of an agenda. God.
Look the way that they did. I was just focused on the tech that they were using to make it happen. Naughty Dog, in terms of like visual fidelity, is some of the best in the industry. Before we get into this, I want to run this scene back with the character. I believe her name is Jordan. She's grabbing her coat and she's putting it on, and you can see, like, I was paying attention to the way that the camera moves over here so that they can swap the model in the off screen to the character that's already wearing the jacket. Just stuff like that. When you're in development and you're...
Holy shit. It's my favorite pistol in CS. I always go Keck 9 Rush B.
Looking at how all of these other studios are pulling off these immaculate things from a tech perspective. That was the shit I was looking at first. But I wasn't really thinking about the actual character design itself while I was watching the trailer for the first time. Maybe I should. I
fucking hate YouTube.
Character design itself.
This shot here, for some reason, is the most impressive to me. Maybe it's just like how, like, maybe it's because, like, growing up, I have watched as games have tried to achieve a seamless look to a character drinking from a bottle or a cup or from they wouldn't even attempt a straw. Good God, that would be hard to pull off, right? Seeing this, it really puts into perspective how far we've come, not just with game graphics, but with the way that, like, objects behave with each other. Like, there was a time where a character model wearing clothes, it was all one model because you couldn't, like, design it such that clothes realistically existed on the character. They'd float. They would have to, But look at this. Like, look at a game from 2012 and compare that, or 2014 and compare that to this. It's insane.
While I was watching the trailer for the first time. Maybe I should. I don't know. But I've been watching the conversation happen over the last few days, and this is one thing that does concern me about the inevitable release date for Intergalactic. Because for me, I like a lot of things that I saw in the trailer, but I do feel like we are in a moment in time when it comes to not only gaming, but media in general, that there is a huge pushback against any sort of what people call woke propaganda, agenda pushing, checkbox checking, inclusion for the sake of checking a box to have inclusion propaganda that the Western studios keep pushing. We've seen the controversy with Assassin's Creed Shadows. We saw the controversy with Concord, a $400 million crash and burn. We saw the controversy with Star Wars Outlaws. We're seeing the controversy with games like Fable. Hell, even at the Game Awards with The Witcher 4, we're seeing people push back against that as well. And it is becoming increasingly obvious to me that it is almost impossible to talk about the AAA space without divulging into the negative cesspool that is the culture war. And like I said, I've tried to...
And he's right. And I think there's a big part of why... Here's why I think this has happened, okay? You might think I'm being too charitable here. That's fine. I'm going to try to engage with this as honestly as I can. If you're a young male or female gamer, then this is likely your position. And this is mostly based off of a lot of anecdotal experience. There's no data to track this, so that's all I have to go off of. But I'd like to say I'm pretty, socially experienced when it comes to interacting with gamers. And this has been my general impression. If you're a guy and you like video games, there are a couple things, or a variety of things that might be of concern to you, right? Now, most people who play video games play normie shit, all right? Like, if we're talking real gamers, we're talking people that are playing, like, niche indie games all day, or old-ass shit like Classic WoW or something that requires hours of grinding a day. And they're doing that all day. These are the real hardcore gamers. But if we're talking the majority of gamers, they're playing, like, casual AAA popular stuff that mostly comes out on console, because most of them are on console. And those people are playing a lot of like story games, console exclusives, and because of that, they treat it a lot like a show or a movie. It seems a lot less like fun or gameplay are a huge concern, and it seems more like the characters they play and the story that the game tells are a higher concern than gameplay in a lot of cases with these like more casual AAA gaming console players, right? And it feels like they have, and I'll say this, there is a distinct feeling that gaming is moving away from the what we now consider comically hyper-masculine, hyper-violent aesthetic it used to have. Think back to like God of War 3, I think it was, where Kratos grabs that one slave woman that Poseidon has and uses her to like hold a gear crank in place so he can get through a door, and then as you walk through off screen you hear her like tear in half as she screams, and it's like, huh, Kratos doesn't give a fuck. He's just doing what he has to. It's like, yeah, it's meant to be considered awful, but it's also like, man, you know, like that shit was, that kind of vibe was very casual in gaming back then. And I feel like it didn't hit as hard because graphics weren't as good back then. You know, horrific acts could not be very concisely depicted. And so we don't consider it as serious as we once did. But when you think about, like, if gaming culturally had stayed the same, things would be pretty weird, and I feel like it'd be pretty alienating to a lot of audiences, right? Another position has been the discussion of attractive characters. Now, a lot of people talk about, I want to be super charitable to the people who are upset that they feel like characters are less attractive. Let's be honest, all right? We give these people a lot of shit, but wanting attractive characters to look at doesn't necessarily make you a gooner. Okay? Not everybody who's upset about what they perceive as lesser attractive characters featuring in these games, not all of them are just like wanting to jack off to those characters, okay? That's not necessarily the case. In fact, I've spoken to a lot of women who play games, particularly MMOs. And most of them who play MMOs play as female characters, and they try to cutesify their character as much as possible. They don't necessarily make their characters super slutty, showing a ton of skin and like tits out and everything, but they like to make their character pretty. This is something I've found is very consistent. And if a guy is playing as a female character, they like to make them, if not outright hot, pretty. Genuinely, because, let's be real, if you're going to look at the face or the back side of a character for hours on end, you want to find them attractive. This actually equally applies across the spectrum. Look at how much women, and particularly the gays, have fallen in love with Astarion from Baldur's Gate 3. Astarion has a legion of simps. I've got friends that don't even necessarily simp for Astarion, they simply admire him. You know? I want to make it clear, psychologically, humans like and are attracted to attractive people. A cast of attractive actors on a show is going to be better for that show than a cast of actors who are, like, normal looking, you know? That's just how it works. It's not necessarily a death knell, but it's a genuinely helpful factor. People like looking at attractive people, and because of this, there is some merit to the idea that a lot of non-weird, completely normal, like, gamers are wanting to see more attractive to them characters in media. And I'm not saying that characters like the girl that we see in this trailer aren't attractive, but they are unconventionally attractive. And when we talk about people who are unconventionally attractive, we're not saying they're unattractive, because they are, but they aren't attractive to the majority. That's why we say unconventionally. Or at least the majority might not be open about how they find them attractive. And so, statistically, by definition, when you have unconventionally attractive, or conventionally unattractive, I should say, characters, which is becoming more commonly the case, and that is, in some cases, the point, that is going to push some percentage of people away, and it always was going to. Like, there is always some group of people out there that are going to see, like, not in a gooner way, but more in, like, an admiring way. They see characters they find attractive, and it makes them want to play the game. Or watch the movie. Whatever it may be. And I think that's, like, a lot more common and a lot more normal than people on the left give it credit for. And I don't think the response to this needs to be like, okay, so these game developers need to stop making characters that are considered, like, unattractive. I think our response needs to be, okay, yeah, you don't consider these characters attractive. That's fine. You don't have to play the game, though. Like, all the games that you enjoy from your past are still out there, and trust me, there's going to be plenty more games coming out plenty frequently that you'll approve of. Why do you have to fight in a culture war against the games that you consider woke or DEI? Why do there have to be, like, lists for boycotting? Why do there have to be, like movements to mass review bomb, you know? It's people who have genuine feelings, like what I talked about before, with finding, like, certain characters attractive and wanting to look at attractive characters. Their upsetness that they feel like less characters are attractive to look at for them is being weaponized by these grifters and they're turned into foot soldiers to fight in this culture war. They constantly woke spot anytime a new game or movie or piece of nerd media comes out.
To stay out of it for as long as I possibly can. And even now, I don't know if I share the same opinions about how the character is designed. What I don't want to see is a character that is designed in a way to push the propaganda forward. And what I mean by that is, when I saw the dialogue written for Dragon Age Veilguard, when it was so, like, hit hammer overhead, trans this, non-binary that, pronouns this, pronoun.
It's also worth keeping in mind that the majority of gamers are not very knowledgeable on trans issues. And so simply mentioning trans people is woke. because you got to remember we've backslid a lot on trans rights. The Hogwarts Legacy game or like controversy in the gaming sphere did some numbers on the reputation of transgender people like within the gaming sphere. So yeah, that's a battle we're gonna have to fight for quite a while. Bro is overreacting to like 5 minutes of cutscenes. Yeah, but like I said, like the majority of gamers, at least, that have a platform, it seems, even this guy who's mostly not making anti-woke content, like I've never seen him make a video it's about how things are woke. They get pissed about that shit. They get triggered when they hear trans or even a reference to it. I think what's happening here as well is if we're trying to be charitable here so we can understand these people and maybe move them out of this cringe shit. A lot of them have noticed rainbow capitalism. We call it out when we see it. We all know what rainbow capitalism is. We know these corporations that don't change their logo to a pride flag in Russia or the Middle East sectors of their company on social media. We know that these companies don't actually mean it when they do their whole Pride Month thing or they try to virtue signal. They're doing it because they know that progressive politics is financially profitable to them. That's why they do it. It's fake. It's pandering. And what we call it is rainbow capitalism. We already have a word for that, and we already call it out. These people have taken an already existing recognition of that everybody who is immersed in gaming media, and even just modern media in general, already has. And they have had that weaponized by these culture war fighters. And of course, there is the default level of ignorance. Guys, I hate to tell you, but with the trans stuff, we've got a hard battle to fight with convincing people on that. I feel like nowadays, if someone is born a certain way and everyone knows that's the case, most people default to, who cares? Just let them live their lives. Who gives a shit? I don't care. And most people are even like that when it comes to trans people who are adults. The reason why so many have become angry at the inclusion of trans people is because of the successful pushing of the idea that trans people are predators trying to groom kids into becoming trans, and that we're pushing like top surgery and bottom surgery on kids, like the left is trying to trans the kids or whatever. That idea has caught on substantially. We've got a pretty hard battle to fight there. Unfortunately, I hate to tell you, it's not even a crazy right-wing position to believe this now. I'd say this is like the standard position that people have on the trans issue. We just got a lot to fight for there.
Sounds that when the devs feel like it's a necessity to like force it down our throats in game dialogue and making it a huge focal point of the,
they feel like it's shoved down their throats. And to some extent, it's like, yeah, they were absolutely writing that scene to bring attention to it. There was probably a trans writer or someone involved in the this looks really good, by the way, like graphically, holy shit. There was probably a trans writer or something that wanted to make this scene with the explicit purpose of having, like, that's always been Dragon Age's deal. They've got like gay and trans characters and stuff. You can be gay in the game. There's lots of gay romances in the game. There's gay characters. There always has been. So there was definitely an intention there in being inclusive. I think it's important, though, not to let this culture war anger and this desire to call out rainbow capitalism go too far. There's a big difference between what I would say looks to me like a genuine heartfelt project made by real developers who have a genuine passion for what they're doing, and something that's like corporate slop, right? Look at these big, like, multi-billion-dollar gacha games, for example. Anything that comes from that, any factor of those games, is made with the sole purpose of addicting people and getting them to spend more money, right? Like, it's all advertising. So I get that. In the case of Dragon Age, though, it's the writing. It's the game's features. It's what the developers, the artists behind the game chose to do. I don't think that, like, the gay romances in Dragon Age were a corporate like top-down decision for the sake of woke DEI points or whatever. I think this was artist intent. This is where it becomes really frustrating. This culture war stuff has refocused people's genuine frustration with, say, rainbow capitalism shoehorned into good media, for instance, and refocused it on this idea that instead of there being real artists behind this who decided to, in some way, shape, or form, put their politics in there, which all artists have always done, and is a completely respectable thing to do because it is their art, and if you're going to consume it, I mean, you can critique the art if you want to, but, you know, you got to respect that obviously an artist's opinion's going to be in there, right? Criticize it for what it is, I suppose, but don't criticize that it's there. It's when you start to criticize this, right? Like the idea of the characters existing. There's a big difference between this studio, or not studio, this company, publisher, is advertising and trying to appeal to a certain like market or demographic in their advertising, and when you actually buy the game and play it, the artists who made the game made a decision, story or art-wise, to depict a certain thing. They get mad about what artists have decided to include in their art and not just what the corporate higher-ups have decided in advertising and other things like that in order to try and make money. And I feel like it's become too broad. You know, there's some friendly fire going on.
The character. I think that's where people have a huge problem with what is currently going on at these studios in the West. And I have to say, even if it's not a huge problem to me, I didn't buy Dragon Age Veilguard, I didn't buy Concord, I'm not divulging and putting my money where these things are that I'm just kind of looking over the fence like, this looks like a fucking time bomb waiting to go off. I'm gonna just stay clear of that. But Intergalactic is a game that actually has my interest, but I feel is about to be one of the biggest martyrs when it comes to this culture war, overwhelming negativity that we see online. And I gotta say, like, as much as you can try to ignore it, you can't ignore the numbers. Concord was a $400 million fail, and everybody was...
So this is where things start to get really touchy with these culture wars arguments, right? The right has so successfully made it a conversation about if this game fails, it's because of wokeness and DEI. If it succeeds, it's because it's not woke, and it goes against wokeness and DEI. They're very good at finding projects that, at least on the surface, I mean, even on the surface, they might be overtly woke, by the standards of anything else they would call woke. And they'll still say it's anti-woke. Take the Mario movie, for example. I call it sinking ship spotting. They find a sinking ship, a big franchise or a product that's coming out that is, if you read the tea leaves and you're good at reading the vibes, probably not going to do well. And they start attacking it and claiming that it's woke. Usually because there's an already pre-existing anger from the fan base that is already into that niche for other reasons. They start making attack videos on that product and talking about how it's falling off. And they start saying, oh, it's because of the wokeness, the DEI, these corporate executives working with Sweet Baby Inc. or whatever. And so they'll find something that's going to succeed. They'll claim it's anti-woke, and they'll ride its success to the top. And then they'll, of course, shit on something that is doomed to fail, in most people's perception, and hope that it does fail, and use their prediction that it failed to support the credibility of their argument that people are just fed up with this woke stuff. Do you want to know what I and the vast majority of gamers thought when Concord was first announced? Who needs another hero shooter right now? Plus the art style just looks uninspired and kind of meh. It's not like a established franchise or anything. Like, this is everything that Marvel Rivals is not. Marvel Rivals filled the niche this game was supposed to fill, because it had established characters in a franchise, a nice art style that's pleasant to look at and is defined and easy on the eyes, that kind of Fortnite, Overwatch kind of art style. It's pretty well developed. It was made by the original Overwatch developers, like Overwatch 1.0 developers. And so it's apparently as good as original Overwatch was on launch. And it also released free-to-play. Yeah. Concord was always destined to fail. The Chuds recognized this, since they said, hey guys, this game is going to fail because of DEI. And if it fails, then that's proof that we're right, and we're good at predicting what's causing these games to fail. and people fall for it. Even Big Fry here has fallen for this mindset that, oh yeah, the fact that Concord failed means that Western gamers are fed up with this woke stuff because this cat alien character with pink hair is woke because we've decided that non-traditionally colored hair is part of the woke agenda.
Yelling from the rooftops that they just didn't like the character designs. Ugly fucking characters don't sell well to gamers. And it's one of those things where, like, you might think it's ridiculous. You might think, just go jerk off, watch porn. Why does it matter? It clearly matters. And I'm coming to the realization that, like,
not always, but yeah, to an extent it does. Like, most of the gamers who are mad about this are not just wanting to jack off to the games they're playing. People like looking at attractive characters in movies, games, and shows. And so some significant percentage of the population is always going to be mad if they consider the characters they see on screen unattractive. That's always going to happen. And there's a reason why Hollywood has had such a looks bias for so long. They love playing it safe. And it's called playing it safe for a reason. Because it's safe. It's what you know will do well. It's what you know people will respond to. The fact is, the outrage against unconventionally attractive characters or conventionally unattractive characters is just people screaming from the rooftops that they are not individuals. They are sheep. They are part of the crowd. They are part of that lowest common denominator that Hollywood and all of these big corporate executives consider just a big number because all of their buying habits and all of their behavior are completely predictable. Anyway, they're really trying to bring GamerGate 2 back, but I feel like they're going to burn themselves out. All it takes is continuing to wage war on these games that end up being big successes for that to happen. A really good example, in fact, was the Mario movie. They attacked it relentlessly. It came out, it succeeded, and they completely walked it back, but everyone saw that go down, and man, a lot of those Chud YouTubers lost a lot of traction after the Mario movie shenanigans. Look at The Last of Us 2, for example. They waged war on that game. They tried to make that game fail. And do you want to know what happened in The Last of Us Part 2? On the first day of its release, it was already the most sold PlayStation game ever. In less than 24 hours, it had sold more copies than any PlayStation game had ever sold, ever, in their lifetimes. On day one. The only game I think will ever beat The Last of Us 2. The Last of Us 2 sold bad considering The Last of Us 1 sold 30 million. No, Jiggery Pokery, that's completely false. The Last of Us 2 broke records. You can have complaints about The Last of Us 2, and I can tell you probably didn't like it, but objectively speaking, The Last of Us 2 sold extraordinarily well. It broke sales records for, like, Sony. There was a cis actress that Chuds assumed was trans because she had Korra-like muscles. Yeah. Too bad The Last of Us 2 devs got treated like shit during development. That too. Well, the corporate... So this is what's so frustrating as well. A lot of the valid hatred for big corporate publishers is for things like crunch time and poor treatment of developers. But we're also seeing the anger about that directed at the developers. Like, how often do you see people angry about developers being mistreated and overworked, and they blame the studios? They don't even have the vocabulary to understand and speak about who's actually causing the problem. It's publishers, not studios or devs, causing the majority of problems you have with games nowadays. It's publishers. It's the publishing companies. It's frustrating stuff. Gamers are just not smart, like, in general. Like, you can meet a gamer who is, like, a genius when it comes to, like, game knowledge about some really obscure, hyper-complicated, really deep game, but that doesn't mean they know a lot about the real world. They might be quite ignorant, and ignorance is the wet dream of conservatives. Believe me, it really is. Anyway, if you guys enjoyed this segment, if you found it enjoyable, entertaining, or educational, then please consider leaving a like. Every single thumbs up goes a long way to support my channel and the algorithm, as do comments. Whether you're watching live or after the fact, please like and comment. It means so much. And of course, if you leave a subscription as well, it'll make sure that YouTube tells you when I go live or upload a new video. And follow my social medias, linked down below in the description if you want to see more stuff from me on other platforms, including my Blue Sky and my Discord server. Highly recommend you join those. Finally, if you want to support me directly, financially, help me keep the lights on and a roof above my head here at the Xander Hall studio, then please consider donating, subscribing, or gifting a sub on my website, xanderhall.com/live, or supporting me financially through YouTube, Twitch, Streamlabs, StreamElements, Patreon, or buying merch through the Streamlabs link down below in the description. With all that said, no matter how you support me, thank you so much for watching, and have a good one.